Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Andrey, and I work on the K6 team at Grafana Labs.
And I'm Théo. I'm an engineer and a maintainer of the K6 project.
And we have a lot to cover in the next almost 30 minutes. We are going to announce something big that Matt already spoiled. We are going to address the elephant, rather the robot in the room. And we are going to have a live demo, so buckle up. And let's get straight into it. Almost a year ago, at GrafanaCON in Seattle, we announced K6 version 1. It took us 9 years, countless iterations, and we finally shipped the first major stable version. And today we're doing it again. K6 version 2 comes out on May 11th, 2026. And before you panic, a lot of what you know and love about K6, it's not going anywhere. If you built your pipelines, you wrote your scripts or extensions with K6 version 1, a lot will look and feel familiar, and we were very intentional about that. But K6 version 2 is packed with a new whole set of tools that is built for the world we currently live in. A world that looks radically different from the one when we started planning it. And throughout this talk, I'll walk you through some highlights of the new version. We're going to talk about new Assertions API. We're going to talk about the overhauled extension catalog with official and community tiers. We're going to talk about Subcommand Extensions, the K6 operator release, and machine-readable outputs. But first, let me hand it over to Théo, because there is a bigger conversation we need to have.
Thanks, Andrey. So, like Andrey said, let's just address the robot in the room. A quick show of hand. Who of you uses AI in any form on a daily basis? There you go. I use AI, he uses AI, you all use AI. And so we had made an initial plan for K6 v2, but I would say roughly 6 months ago, everything went through the window, and we needed to adapt it to this new world. We're vibe coding. Now you know that probably most of you are. And actually, the first studies are hinting at the fact that at least 80% of engineers are already using AI in their daily workflows. 60% of them are using it for testing. Us software engineers are slowly turning into product engineers. And we ship more, there's more output volume, the speed goes faster and faster when it comes to delivery, but so does the count of bugs, vulnerabilities, outages. The news are full of it. There are first studies that are conducted on this very specific topic, and they're hinting at a 1,000% increase in terms of vulnerabilities. You've heard that right. That's 10 times more. So we might be coding faster than ever, but we believe that speed shouldn't come at the cost of confidence. AI generates code, and nowadays, less and less of us actually fully grasp what's running in production. I certainly don't, and I love my job, and I love engineering things. But that also means that we have much more blind spots, and the blast radius of those blind spots is even bigger. When things go wrong, they go wrong in a much more dramatic way. So now that we're all 10x engineers, we also have 10 times more opportunities to break things. And hoping AI got it right is probably not the right strategy. It's certainly not ours. So testing, we're pretty much convinced of this, is just not a nice to have anymore. It's your safety net. And for it to be functional in this new era, it needs to be exactly where the code is generated, directly in your workflows. So with that in mind, K6 v2 treats AI as a first-class feature. And to do that, Andrey will tell you a bit more about this feature later, but we leverage a new feature of K6 v2, which are Subcommand Extensions. All you need to know now is that you, as a user, can add custom commands to the tool to make it fit your own workflow. And we did that for ourselves, and we are shipping 3 subcommand extensions, which are specifically targeted at AI and agentic workflows. The first one of those is the agent command. This is really hard to name such a feature, but essentially what it does is you run it inside of your project, And it's going to configure your agentic workflow of choice, Claude Code, Codex, Cursor, OpenCode, you name it. It's going to bring the configuration, the skills, the references, and specific bits of configuration, such as the MCP server I'm about to tell you in a second, so that your AI agent of preference knows how to create a testing strategy and execute on it. I just spoke about it, but the second command is the MCP. So K6 has an MCP server since a couple of months, and this MCP server can be directly run from the command line. And what it means is that you don't need to install anything outside of K6. If you have K6, you have the MCP, and your agents are able to validate, run, and verify scripts on the go. And finally, the docs command is there to help your AI, to help reduce the cost of your AI figuring out how to write a script. K6 is very, very much centered around JavaScript. AI is already really good at this, but we have a ton of APIs that are a bit like arcane. And so this subcommand is specifically designed to make it cheap to figure out how it works. But those are just words. How about we actually show you? And what's the best way to actually prove you that this works? Then do it on the Grafana website itself. Let's pray for the AI non-deterministic demo gods, because you know how it goes. It should work in theory. So yeah, there you go. So this is an almost empty folder, and I'm going to run the agent command. And you see my terminal is already a little bit clever, and it knows that I prefer Claude Code personally. No judgment, this is my tool of choice. And so when I run it, what it actually does is it initializes this specific project to bring all the tooling and the configuration for you to be able to write tests. So if you assume that this folder already has some code, right now there isn't, because we're going to do something else very specific. It's going to bring the settings, which at the moment basically tells your agent where the MCP is, but more importantly, it's actually bringing a lot of skills. And among those skills, which for other agents such as VS Code actually are agents, a lot of those are specifically designed to go from requirements to an actual test suite. So I mentioned we would dog food. So what are we dog fooding? Let's assume I know nothing about testing and I have a product, a pretty cool product if you ask me, Grafana. This is the live website. I'm not pretending, this is play.grafana.org. And let's say we have this dashboard that I really like, which is the SQL expressions showcase. And as a user, let's say I'm a developer, I'm new on the team, and I'm advising the testing strategy. I want to make sure it works. How do I do that? Let's start with things that we all do on a daily basis when we use Grafana. The first thing I do all the time is change the time frame. So one thing I would like to test is I switch between 6 and 12 hours, and I want those graphs to essentially update with the new data. Another thing I do all the time, because I never remember the PromQL query format, is go in the panel, edit it, and play around. So how about we also test this? And finally, I'm a K6 maintainer, not a Grafana maintainer. I have zero clue how Grafana works. But maybe an agent can figure this out for me and actually write a test that's going to verify that whatever loads those panels with data is actually functional and supports a certain amount of load. So to do that, we can go back to Claude, kick it off, and you'll see that now, so we started clean, there was nothing, but the agent command actually brought, in this case, skills. So the load test skill, the smoke test skill, the test planner, browser test, and also a Playwright converter. If you have a Playwright script, it will be converted automatically, and a couple of MCP resources. But the one we're really interested in today is the test planner. And so what we're going to do, if my demo is properly set up, it isn't. Give me a second. We're going to take a prompt that I've already written, and we're just going to paste it there and kick it off. What this prompt is doing, it's essentially describing the workflow I walked you through. So go on play.grafana.org, and I would like you to ensure that I can change the time range, the data updates. I can go in a panel, edit it, and it updates. Sorry, this is the Chrome MCP. And I tell it to use the Chrome MCP to do that. and also figure out with the Chrome MCP, look at the traffic, what are some relevant requests that fill the panels with data. And now I ask it, OK, I want a test suite. I want to make sure that those things keep working. Just do it. But how about you tell us more about K6 v2 while this works in the background?
Right. So can we have the slides back? Right. So while our agents are working, let me show you a few highlights of the upcoming version 2.0. I have 5 of them, and I suggest that we start from the top. As you might be familiar, K6 version 1 always had a checks API. And checks are great for low testing cases. We designed them specifically with this in mind. They don't halt execution. They emit metrics. They give fail-pass percentages. But for functional testing, or for browser testing, or for this kind of, does this actually do what I expected? Validation, they always felt like a workaround. In version 2, we deliver the new Assertions API. And this API, as you might have noticed, is inspired by Playwright syntax. So if you used Playwright before, you will see many familiar concepts, like hard and soft assertions, or async ones for browser testing that do this very convenient auto-retries. This API moves K6 from did it crash to did it do exactly what I expected. And this is what you need when there is an AI agent that writes the code, and your users depend on this. Now let's talk about extensions. In version 1, we introduced native extension support that massively reduced the amount of times when you need a custom build. But the discovery and the trust story was still pretty rough. You had to know what's out there. You had to trust that it works. In version 2, we introduced an extension catalog with 2 tiers. The extension catalog uses automatic dependency resolution. In short terms, how it works, you reference a module in your script, you run it, and it just works. Everything is handed out in the background. And with this K6, it's not just a testing tool anymore. It's a testing platform with a real ecosystem. The extension catalog comes in 2 tiers. The first one is official. These are extensions that are built and maintained by Grafana Labs. And we guarantee stability and security. Things like XK6 Faker for test data generation, or MQTT for IoT protocol testing, or SQL for database validation. The second tier is community extensions. And these are extensions maintained by external developers, by people like Pierre Humbert with XK6 SSE or Mostafa Moradian with XK6 Kafka. Grafana Labs provides guidelines and tooling to help maintainers to keep their extensions stable and secure. But the innovation, it comes from community. The extension catalog is already available today. There is a link in there. Go explore, see what fits your workflow already. Now, what I was talking about right now, these are JavaScript extensions. They provide modules that you can import in your script, and nothing has changed in this regard. But in version 2, we introduce a completely new type of extensions, the subcommands. They don't add an import module. They add a whole new command to the K6 CLI itself. And to create such extension yourself, the process is very standard. You create a Go module, and K6 picks it up. And if this extension is already listed in the catalog, we automatically provision this. So K6 will identify that the command or extension is missing. It will provision the right binary on demand, and will run this command. There's no manual step in between. But if you're building something custom that fits your specific workflow, or maybe something new that is not in the catalog yet, you will just go the same familiar path with XK6 and custom build. And Théo already mentioned 3 of these extensions that are available: the agent, MCP, and the docs. There's also Explore that helps you or your AI agent to navigate the extension catalog and see what's there and maybe find something that fits the job. And anyone can build their own. And the K6, with these extensions, K6 is not just a platform. It's not a platform for testing. It allows you to define the workflow that your team needs. And now let's talk what's happening beyond the test. Because the test that runs on your laptop, it's useful. It runs, it prints results to the standard output, but that's not enough. Tests need to grow with you, from the first run to production infrastructure. And K6 version 2 is designed to scale alongside your stack. We introduced 3 layers. First, you observe. We ship first-class machine-readable outputs with version 2. The OpenTelemetry allows you to output the OpenTelemetry output allows you to stream into your existing observability stack. If you're already using Grafana, Grafana Cloud, Tempo, Mimir, results will show up right alongside your application telemetry. It's a single pane of glass. And then new structured JSON output allows you to integrate K6 into your custom pipelines, dashboards, or maybe give this output to the AI agent to analyze and reason about this. Then you automate. We introduced a new GitHub Action, Run K6 action, that makes it that simple to run K6 on GitHub. Every commit, every merge, every PR, every deployment, all tested automatically. And with the new machine-readable outputs, it closes the loop. It gives you this fully automated circle. When the code is written, whether by a human or AI, then tests are running, the results go back into the pipeline, and nothing is shipped without a proof that it works. The third layer is scale. K6 operator hit version 1.0. And for those of you who are not familiar with what the operator is, it allows you to run distributed K6 tests on Kubernetes. This is where your app lives. And version 1 is a commitment. It means semantic versioning, stable CRDs, predictable release schedule, and a clear upgrade path. So if you've been holding off using operator in your production, this is a signal that it's ready. And this is how you go from I run a test to testing is a part of my infrastructure. You observe, you automate, and you scale. Theo, how our agents are doing now? Let's check it out.
It's doing surprisingly well, but I'm still going to tell you how it's going just in case it would take much longer than we thought. Because, yeah, AI is fast, but generally not that fast. Except today, it was supposed to not be done, but it's done. But anyway, a terminal output is quite hard to read, right? And it's quite hard to parse, especially on a big screen. So I'm spoiling the results a little bit. Claude and K6 v2, as part of the demo, did essentially 4 things. So as we've seen it do at the very beginning when I launched the skill, it explored play.grafana.org, popping this hideous Chrome for your poor eyes. I'm sorry about that. And it started clicking around, taking screenshots, and essentially trying to build a mental model of the app. And once it had done that, then it switched to the new tools that K6 version 2 provides. First of which, the documentation. So it essentially, with us instructing it to use K6 as part of the prompt, it essentially started by reading the documentation. I have opened this website, I need to test it, what should I do next? And the nice thing about it is that it reads progressively, and it reads only what it needs to read. And so it figured out about the APIs that it should use, best practices, and picked up specific patterns for the kind of testing it wants to do. And once it had done that, it started leveraging the MCP. And the MCP essentially allows it to do 2 things. It writes a script, and it can call the MCP to validate it really quick and token efficient, and then run it against production with very, very little settings. We also protect those to make sure that what it actually wrote works in the real world. And it keeps iterating using this until it passes. And finally, those slides are dated because it used to generate 3 tests, but in my test this morning, it generates more like 6 or 7 tests, even stuff you don't ask about, but that's a good thing. So it generates tests, a full test suite that is actually matching the requirements that we're looking to achieve. So if we switch back to the demo, and to the terminal. Yeah, sorry, go for it. Up. And we look at the results. So it went actually really quick. And what we can see is that based on those requirements that we asked, so open play.grafana.org, change the time range, make sure the data is updated, go in a panel, edit it, change the query, make sure it keeps working, and figure out what are the requests that fill a Grafana dashboard, and write, at the very least, a load test for that. What it did is, you can see, it used it spawned a couple of sub-agents, it used a lot of tools to be able to do that, and it ended up generating 5 tests. 5 is bigger than 3, so it's probably better. What we see is we have a browser dashboard test, that's a load test specifically. It's called load, but it's actually a smoke test. We have a browser test that verifies the time range change feature. We have another one for the panel edit, and it did both a smoke and a load test for the API data. It also tells us what it covers, but more importantly, the skill makes sure that it tells you exactly how to run this test suite, and it even offers to run it for you. We're not going to run it on stage because this is going to take quite a bit of time, but how about we look at what it generated for us? So we can see that it actually recorded the captured requests, if we want to introspect that, but it also generated those tests. So if we go in tests, we can see that the file it mentioned actually exists. It did not hallucinate. And maybe the first thing that I, as a user, would be interested in seeing is, what is the script for the time range change looking like? Because I'm a very skeptical person. I wouldn't trust an AI to do a good job, although most of the time it does and makes me lie, but I'm fine with that. So if we look at the script, it's actually a pretty canonical script, and I'm always amazed to see that. It actually picked up on the dashboard URL. It created a browser scenario, so it knows through the documentation exactly how to test through a browser directly in K6. And it wrote this test, which is nicely annotated and does exactly what we asked for. Navigate to the dashboard, wait for the panels to render, then assert the panel heading is visible, click the time range picker, in the dropdown, click last 1 hour, then wait for it to be updated, and finally verify that the URL changed and that the data are updated. So this one is a resounding success, and honestly, from here, I think it would have taken me probably 3 or 4 hours to write something that good. Now, how about the browser panel? If we go really quickly take a look, I don't expect anything crazy, but same, detected the right URL, actually took note of the expected query, and it's the same thing. Opens Chrome, makes a script that opens Chrome, goes there, and same thing. Navigate to the panel, verify the query editor row is visible, start clicking around, verify that the Prometheus request is correct, modify it, and so on and so forth. And this is all following the best practices of K6. And finally, probably the thing that, for me as an old backend engineer, I used to be a backend engineer, is the most interesting, is the API load test. So I want to make sure that when we have, how many, 35 million users at this point, something like this, I don't remember. Imagine all those people connect. Can we make sure that it works? Well, this is a test on stage. I'm not going to take play.grafana down. But here, it actually created a load test scenario. It defined some thresholds. So for instance, automatically it decided for me that 95 of the requests should take less than 1 second, and 99% of them less than 2 seconds. It also makes sure that there's no errors, that the rate of failed request is below 1%, and then it proceeds with writing an actual load test, which is nicely grouped and have those checks. Could also be assertions in smoke test, it probably is, that verify that when we send a given request, we receive responses that look and behave correctly, and we start punching the server, in this case with 20 requests per second. But so if we go back to the slides now. What used to take days, and let's say, at the very least, a couple of dedicated engineers, testing engineers most of the time, or SRE. A lot of time, a lot of expertise. We've just done it on stage. And I checked Claude, it took 5 minutes. So what would take probably 4 or 5 days before takes 5 minutes. It actually took requirements, transformed it into a strategy, and deliver the test suite that's ready to go in CI, that's ready to deploy, and that's ready to scale with Kubernetes and with the operator at the scale of your workloads. So that's exactly what K6 version 2 makes possible. You don't have to guess anymore. You can let the AI help you prove that things work the way you say they work.
And let me put it all together. K6 version 2 drops on May 11th. And it will look and feel familiar, but it's also designed for the world that we currently live in, where the agents write code and testing is basically their safety net. And here is what we want you to do once the new version drops.
Please use the agent command, initialize your workflows in whatever projects you have. It could be a pet project, a big production project. Try it out. I was convinced, and I started as skeptical, and now I use this all the time.
Go explore, browse the extension catalog, and find an extension that fits your stack, or even better, contribute on one yourself. Integrate Run K6 action in CI, and make testing non-negotiable. Nothing should be shipped without a proof.
And finally, scale. Like deploy K6 with the K6 operator where it actually matters the most, in production.
May 11th, stop guessing, start proving, and mark your calendars. Thank you.
Thank you.